Divorce after age 55, often referred to as gray divorce, has become more common than ever. What may or may not be surprising to our audience, according to an article by Purdue University in just March of this year, over 60% of gray divorces are initiated by women. If divorce has been or could be a part of your retirement journey, the financial impact can be life-changing. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. Today's topic is one that is becoming more and more relevant, and that again is gray divorce. That is divorced after age 55, and it's a growing trend that brings unique emotional and financial challenges, especially for women who are either nearing or maybe already in retirement. I actually recently spoke to a prospective client who, after her divorce, she ended up with a house, but none of the retirement assets. And on paper, of course, it looked like a fair split, but now she's really worried about her day-to-day expenses. She's unsure of whether she'll actually be able to retire at all. This is more common than many people realize, and it's why I wanted to bring today's guest on the show. Joining me today is Jill Lowe, a respected family law attorney who specializes in collaborative divorce. She works with women going through major life changes, helping them avoid the common pitfalls of divorce, come out stronger financially and emotionally. For all the links and resources shared in this episode, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Also, don't forget, if you have a question, a topic idea, or a specific retirement challenge you'd like to hear covered on an upcoming episode, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com/ask Eric. And with that, Jill Lowe, welcome to the Simply Retirement Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Eric. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely.
Just to give an introduction about myself, I have been practicing law for over 20 years. I'm licensed in Florida and in Texas. I have been exclusively working in family law cases for about 18 years. And the reason I got into family law and specifically collaborative divorces is based on my own family history. I'm a child of divorced parents. My parents divorced when I was in college, so this was a gray divorce. And my mother, was older. She had encountered very similar issues going through a divorce at a later age, as I see in many of my female clients and some of my male clients as well. But they were in the litigation process, and it took many years, cost a lot of money. It did not provide what the collaborative process provides in looking at the family unit after the divorce. So it just really impacted our family years later and still today. And so I really promote a better way for the couples to end their marriage, one that focuses on families, their goals, their interests, and to avoid what my family had gone through. And so I really use this as my mission, to really help other couples, women going through this same process. And so I kind of think it might be helpful to start off by kind of breaking down what their different types of divorces, right? Because you're hearing collaborative and it's like, okay, some people never heard this word before. And so everyone knows what the traditional litigation divorce is. It's what you see in movies. It's what most people talk about, where, you're in a courtroom. It's more formalized. You have attorneys that are, adversaries. You are focused on positions of, hey, I want this home, or I want this car, or even, I want this amount of money, for my spouse to pay me in maintenance or alimony. So it's a very, more structured, formalized process that really tries to remove all emotions from it. And if the clients can't agree, parties can't agree, judges make the decisions, or sometimes a jury. So that's the litigation process. Collaborative is quite different. It is out of court. It is confidential. And the attorneys work as a team. So instead of fighting against each other, we're really working as a team to create a settlement, to create a resolution that benefits all the parties involved. And we focus on goals and interests. And we really try to get down to the why something is important to one of the clients, because then it can help us become much more creative in structuring the end result. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about what collaborative is later on, in our talk as well. But that's just like a few highlights. And we do bring in neutral professionals, to really help the, clients, a neutral financial professional, a neutral mental health professional. We focus on the families. It's really a much more harmonious process compared to litigation. It's not for everybody, but there are many clients that I have seen benefit from this process. And then you have mediation, which
right. Yeah, if you would, because I think that's one that's popped up. You and I actually had a brief conversation about a friend of ours who doesn't quite fall in the gray divorce category, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But that was kind of direction they wanted to go, or at least that's what the conversation was. I had feelings that things might not go quite as smoothly as they hoped. But yeah, if you could talk about mediation and where that fits in the whole process as well.
Sure. So mediation mostly occurs in a litigation case.
Okay.
It is really kind of, it's a formal meeting where you have a mediator, which is a neutral third person, and they really just take back and forth settlement options. The decision lies with the clients, but the mediator is a facilitator trying to get them to a resolution. It usually lasts just one day. You're in separate rooms, and it's really, there's a lot of just back and forth. I want this. Well, this is my response to that. It's counter offer. I analogize it to my clients as you have a tennis ball and the ball is just going back and forth and back and forth. So that's really what mediation is. And it's a final kind of, let's try and get this settled before we take it to a judge.
So one of the things that kind of stepping back out, and that's a great explanation. I love the tennis ball or the tennis game comparison. But if we can step back just a little bit in terms of thinking gray divorce, because actually that's part of your story. And I think that's always great to hear somebody's story behind how they got into it, because to me, it always means there's always going to be some higher level of passion for what they do. So it's great to hear you share your story. But can you talk a little about what your thoughts are about gray divorce today? And maybe more importantly, why are we seeing this become so much more common?
Yeah, that's a great question. And recently I've had many more gray divorces than I have seen in the last several years. And just looking back at, what I'm noticing of the why people are coming to meet with me and the marriages are ending. And I'm seeing it's happening a lot when the couples start to become empty nesters, the children leaving the home. And, a lot of times it's having a difference in goals or perspectives about what their future might look like as a couple. Or there might be some lingering breakdown in communication that has just built over time. And it's to a point where someone's like, I can't do it anymore. And so those are really kind of what I'm starting to see trending of reasons. I mean, everyone has their own reasons and it might not fall within one of those, but that's just kind of what I'm seeing.
Well, one of the things I would love you to get your feedback on this. So as I was doing research for our conversation today, and I found that article through Purdue University about how many women are responsible for filing for the divorce. Well, one of the things it talked about, it may have been a different article, but it was referencing, that women becoming more part of that financial conversation and feeling a little more confident in their financial situation, and that leading to some of these decisions as well. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I have met with potential new clients in the past where they were afraid of their future financially. And so some of them have made the decision to stay in the marriage for those reasons. And I think women who are in a later in life, there is probably a more accumulation of assets in the estate. They might be feeling more confident in terms of what their future could look like, especially when they don't have minor children at home. So it's maybe starting a new career or changing career paths. So there is a building of confidence, seeing that, with the estate that they do have, that they will be okay. They will be able to manage on their own.
Well, and so looking then at what kind of these next steps, when you start looking at, either the clients you've dealt with or just what the general audience looks at, what do you see as maybe some of the bigger mistakes, or maybe is there a single mistake that you see on a pretty frequent basis that maybe women might be making financially as they're going through a divorce?
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw it in my own family as well. It's making the emotional decision instead of a logical decision when it comes time to looking at the division of their estate. So for example, the home, that typically there's a lot of emotion that is around it. It might be a home that they have raised their children in. They have this idea of it's this nice, really nice big home, but with that comes maintenance and upkeep. And so in some of these instances, they might not have a mortgage, but just the maintenance and upkeep of a larger home can sometimes override their budget and dip into their savings that they do have, where they could be using it in other ways. So I really try to help my clients in seeing the big picture of what their future might look like, and to really step back and to try and cut those emotional kind of ties that might be holding them down, so that they can make an informed, educated, logical decision about dividing assets so that they can plan for their future. So in that example, it might be better for someone to sell the home, get the cash, but also get retirement too, especially if they haven't been paying into Social Security, if they haven't been depositing into an IRA or a 401k on their own and have to rely on their spouses, really getting some retirement to them so that they can manage that and grow that and have that for their future, I feel like is more important than sometimes the home that we just want to keep because we love it and we've just had it for years. So.
Well, is that something that you see, that, you hate to stereotype, men and women, but, it does seem to be that that's a more frequent occurrence where the woman does feel more tied to the house. Maybe that is where their children were raised or grandchildren have spent time there. Whereas the man might be a little bit more connected to the retirement assets, the investment assets. Have you experienced that, or is that more just a misperception?
I think it just depends upon the individual. Kind of, some people have moved around a lot, so they don't have this home that they've had for 20 plus years. So I think it just really depends upon their kind of makeup of their family. But looking back in recent cases, I think in some of those, the females may have had a little bit more emotional attachment to some of the property instead of some of the retirement. I think if you have a situation where one of the spouses, and it could just be a female, it could be a male as well, is been stayed at home parent, hasn't really been working as much. And then you have the other spouse that has been working, and might have more years of work ahead of them. In those situations, the working spouse tends to be more concentrating on their retirement, kind of their investments, their financial investments in financial investing accounts instead of kind of real estate and other things.
Well, so as an attorney who's in this world, do you see that as part of your role to help create a wider view, or to be be a little bit more open-minded around how the assets are going to be split, about being open to saying, hey, financially, it might just not be feasible to stay in the house under the circumstances, or, hey, let's think about what your financial situation is going to look like if you go this way versus going that way. So how's the attorney, what roles do you feel like you could play in those scenarios?
I feel like it's very important to have the conversations with clients about, so that they are making informed and educated decisions of financially what I can't give financial advice, but I can give advice where I say, okay, looking at the estate, what is best to meet your goals? And in the collaborative process, what's really great about that is we have a neutral financial professional who gathers financial documents, part of the settlement team. They are facilitating developing options for settlement. And in some instances, I have referred my clients to financial planners to run projections, to look at their budgets, to see if a settlement option works best for them in meeting their goals and long term before we say yes and before we sign an agreement dividing the estate in that way.
Well, that's the next thing I wanted to go to is just your thoughts, because we've had that conversation around how does a financial planner fit into this conversation? And for example, for us, I've always felt I can add more value kind of on the back end. Once the divorce is final, we know where everything's at. We know what I always talk about that puzzle, that financial puzzle where we get all these pieces. We finally know what the pieces are, but now we got to figure out how we put them together. But there's also, for example, what's called a CDFA or Certified Divorce Financial Analyst that might fit in there somewhere as well, and that may be what you're referring to, who does that initial analysis to kind of help make some of those decisions or do a little more break-even analysis, maybe you would call it. But you kind of talk about how financial advisors fit into this process.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even if you're not in the collaborative process, I think it's always prudent and wise to consult with a financial planner or a financial professional before making a decision, because I really feel like the client needs to understand, needs to be educated, right? It's that informed consent, informed agreement, because we can't undo something after an agreement's been signed. So if they go and meet with a professional after the agreement has been finalized, and then the financial professional is like, well, why'd you agree to this? Like, you should have asked for X, Y, and Z. I can't go back and change it. It's done. So it's better before agreeing to consult with somebody. And I really feel like it's better to do that as you're evaluating different settlement options. Even in a litigation process, if you're in mediation and you're like, well, I'm not ready to sign yet, but I want to speak with a financial professional before, just to run it by them and see what they say, that can happen as well. So I really do feel like it's important to consult with these professionals before signing a document. Sometimes clients even meet with a financial professional before initiating a divorce as well. They just want to have an understanding of how it might look, what their budget. I think budgets are extremely important in a divorce. We traditionally do this in the collaborative process. We work on budgets post-divorce because I think it's really helpful for someone to see when you have your budget and you have a certain amount of cash or investments, how long is this money going to last me? And I think that that's extremely important. So I think the financial professional can come in many different times, help in many different ways, running projections, evaluating retirement, evaluating budgets. They can play a very crucial role in structuring the final settlement.
Well, one thing I was going to point out for our audience, if you want to go back to, I believe it was episode 41 with Neil Palache, he is a financial coach for women who are, and as he said, he actually works a lot of women before they actually make this divorce decision and helping them prepare to what are the expectations of going into this versus being caught off guard. So that would be one suggestion for our audience. But one of the things you and I talked about, kind of referencing your point about especially for our audience who are kind of in this retirement phase of life or getting close to it, or maybe already in retirement, of having an advisor who does specialize in retirement income planning, where you were also looking at things like Social Security. And as you said, if you've got a budget, if you know what your expenses are, we got to make sure you got enough assets to generate the income to cover that, whether that is from Social Security or pensions. There may be splitting of a pension in the conversation as well. Again, all these different pieces of the puzzle, as we talked about, and how do we put those together? But if you're in the the age 55 plus and you're close to retirement or in retirement, making sure that that financial professional has that expertise to help you understand what your options are if you're not able to return to the workforce. And again, everybody's situation is different, but if we're really looking at relying on assets for covering your lifestyle, you got to make sure you know what that's going to look like.
Yeah. And I think that also comes in very helpful when evaluating an ask for maintenance or alimony as well, because someone can understand, okay, we have these IRAs, or we have a 401k or a pension. And really, when it starts to get divided, you can also help them with, okay, you're going to have to start taking the mandatory withdrawals as well. Or we're going to get this pension. What is the net that you're going to receive every month when the spouse retires? And so it all becomes very crucial when evaluating that, because sometimes people will come to me and they say, I need this amount of money for this amount of time. And the other spouse who's working might also want to look at retirement, right? They don't want to have an obligation to pay the maintenance at a certain amount for a very long period of time. They're like, wait a second, I want to retire as well. So when we get in those situations, it becomes very extremely helpful to, number one, know a budget, and number two, also to know when we are at retirement or near retirement or at their age, when they can start taking the distributions, when they will start receiving Social Security. And really, when you analyze it that way, it can provide some comfort to the spouse who says, I need alimony or maintenance at this amount, because then they see that they can get it from other resources. And then it allows the working spouse to achieve some of their retirement goals as well. And not have to work for, so many more years to pay.
If you would, so if there's a woman out there listening who's considering divorce, or maybe they're already going through it, is there one thing that you feel like she should do today to begin protecting her financial future?
I think education is probably the most critical tool that someone has. So, and that looks like a number of different ways, right? Education in terms of what does our estate look like? Becoming educated and informed in terms of what do we have? The second one is education in terms of what the future might look like, right? Budgets, income, and then education with a financial planner, and sitting down and looking at the assets, retirement, how can I save for my future? So it's education. It's to anyone who's out there, I would say, go and get the knowledge and the information. Don't be silent, and don't be blind, because you really, for your future, you need to know what you need to know. So,
well, and I think one of the things, I think you and I, again, I think we talked about this a little bit as well when we first met, was, thinking about, regardless of whether divorce is in your future or not, because you may not know, unfortunately, it may be 10 years from now, 15 years from now. Again, if these gray divorce numbers continue on the same pace, you might be 50 today and all of a sudden find yourself retired at 65. That's one of the highest increasing percentages of divorce is 65 plus. But start that process now of being involved in the conversations, making sure that if there are meetings going on with a financial advisor, that you're participating in those conversations today. Because whether it ends up being divorce or unfortunately losing your husband, which statistically is also a higher probability, there's nothing like being prepared in advance versus finding yourself right in the middle of a catastrophe.
Yeah. And you also brought up a good point that I had thought about as we were preparing for this as well, is when you are in a gray divorce, not only are you concerned about retirement, and the division of the estate, but you're also concerned about health related too, because as you age, there's more health related concerns. And so making sure you address health insurance costs, health insurance
Right.
premiums in general, and just knowing all the different options in terms of whether it's COBRA coverage or, going to the marketplace, or just having all of that information, it becomes more important, I think, in the gray divorces as well. So I just wanted to make that point because you brought up a good topic.
I think that's a great point. That's again kind of referring back to episode 41 with Neil Palace, who founded a group called the Divorce Transition Professionals, which I'm a part of, where we've got access to so many tremendous resources, insurance professionals, attorneys, mortgage officers, loan officers, all these different professionals that specifically work with individuals, and in many cases, women who are going through or preparing to go through a divorce. And that's one of the biggest things I can encourage, again, is just the resources. Just like you said, education and not knowing where the resources are, who to ask. You may not know the answer, but you need to know who to ask. And I think that can be hugely valuable. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure that our listeners know how to connect with you and learn more about your work.
Sure. So you can connect with me. I have a website, lowcollaborativelaw.com. I also have a Facebook page. Instagram is J Lowe Attorney. But if someone is interested in learning more about the collaborative process, Collaborative Divorce Texas is a great website with a lot of resources. And there is also lists of professionals in all the areas of Texas where you can look for an attorney who's a collaborative trained. You can look for a neutral financial professional who is collaborative trained. But the neutral professionals are usually brought into the team by the attorneys. But it's a great place to start. If you want to learn more, look for a professional in your area. I will say the collaborative process is used in most other states as well. So if any of your listeners are out there, or in Florida, California, any other, Alabama, any other state, just doing a simple search, they'll be able to find a collaborative professional as well to consult with and learn more about how the process could be helpful to them if they are finding themselves in a divorce.
Oh, that's perfect. And we will definitely share all those links and resources in the show notes for this episode. This has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, Jill. If you've experienced divorce and you want to make sure your retirement plan still supports your life going forward, we'd love to have a conversation with you. You can visit getmysimplyretirementroadmap.com to schedule your free retirement assessment. We'll walk you through how to make smart decisions around income, investments, taxes, so that you can move forward with clarity and confidence. That is it for today's episode. As a reminder, for all the links and resources, again, that we have mentioned in today's episode, you can visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com. Please don't forget to like, follow, and share our show. Until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.